The office was quiet that morning. Too quiet, the kind of quiet that made your skin itch, like the air was holding its breath. Camille Foster stepped out of the elevator and into the glass-walled silence of Atlas Systems' 24th floor, her heels tapping against the polished concrete like a countdown. She clutched her coffee a little too tightly, burnt, bitter, untouched, knowing something was off the moment she saw the calendar invite labeled Quick Touch Base HR plus Dennis, and nothing else. She'd been through enough reorganizations to know that vague meetings were rarely about touching base. The HR office still smelled like new carpet and stale fear. Tracy, Atlas's always nervous HR manager, stood as Camille entered, gesturing her in with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. But it wasn't Tracy who made Camille's stomach drop. It was the man already seated at the table. Dennis Caldwell, the new regional director from Zenovate, the parent company that had swallowed Atlas 6 months ago in a smiling, cold-blooded merger. Dennis stood just long enough to nod. "Camille, thanks for making time." She sat slowly, instinctively aware that this wasn't a conversation, it was an execution. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like insects. Tracy cleared her throat, slid a paper across the fake wood table toward Camille. "This is an adjustment to your compensation package," she said, not meeting Camille's eyes. Camille blinked at the paper. She couldn't even register the number at first. Her brain wouldn't process it. She read it again, and again, and again. $58,000, down from $144,000. A 60% cut, effective immediately. Something in her chest went very still. The world didn't explode. It just collapsed inward, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. She heard her own heartbeat loud in her ears. Her vision sharpened around the edges of the paper. She saw the ink bleed ever so slightly, the way it always did on cheap office printers. Tracy was saying something, probably about market standards or restructuring, but Camille couldn't hear it, not over the roaring silence in her own mind. When she finally looked up, she smiled. It was a practice smile, the kind she wore for difficult clients or when Isla was having a meltdown at the pediatrician's office. "Calm, composed, controlled. I'll need 24 hours to review this," Camille said. Her voice was level, not a tremor. Dennis looked pleased with her restraint. Tracy looked relieved. Neither of them seemed to notice that she was clutching the edge of the chair so hard her knuckles had gone white. Outside, the sky was gray. Not raining, not sunny, just blank. She didn't remember walking out of the room. She didn't remember getting back to her car in the garage beneath the building. All she remembered was the moment she closed the driver's side door and finally exhaled. The sob hit her before she even realized it had started. Not a pretty, cinematic tear down the cheek. No, this was ugly, violent, the kind of crying that fogged up windows and left your chest heaving and your mascara smeared across your cheekbones like war paint. 9 years. 9 years at Atlas. Late nights, working weekends, missed holidays, skipped field trips, postponed birthdays. All because she believed in what they were building. Because she thought loyalty meant something. Because she believed she was indispensable. And now, they were cutting her salary by more than half and asking her to stay. Stay and smile. Stay and help transition her own job to whatever cheap labor Zenovate planned to replace her with. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just sat there, curled around the steering wheel of her car, shaking so hard she thought she might come apart. Somewhere far above her, the building she helped build with her time, her energy, her life, kept buzzing along like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and Camille Foster was not going down quietly. She hadn't always been this tired. There was a time almost a decade ago when Camille Foster had walked into Atlas Systems for her first day, nerves jangling, heart hopeful, believing in the promise of something new. Back then, the company was just a scrappy little startup in a converted warehouse on the east side of Cincinnati. The office had exposed brick, bad Wi-Fi, and a ping pong table that no one actually used, but everyone bragged about in interviews. There were only 15 employees then. Everyone did everything. Camille was hired as a client success associate, which basically meant account manager, part-time therapist, technical translator, and emergency coffee fetcher rolled into one. It was chaos. Beautiful, ambitious chaos. She loved it. She'd been a single mom for barely a year when she joined. Isla was just a toddler, and Camille had been scrambling, balancing daycare pickups with job interviews, making grocery lists on napkins, praying the pediatrician's office wouldn't call with another asthma flare-up. Atlas had taken a chance on her when no one else would, and she had paid that trust back with everything she had. Late nights. So many late nights. Camille stayed after hours to fix billing errors, troubleshoot integrations, smooth over client panic attacks with calm emails and midnight Zooms. She learned the names of clients' children, their birthdays, their vacation plans, which ones needed a little ego stroking, and which ones responded to spreadsheets in silence. By year 2, she was managing the top 5 enterprise accounts. By year 4, she was overseeing more than 70% of Atlas's recurring revenue. She didn't just keep clients happy, she made them loyal. She made them family. It became her lifeline, especially after Isla's father moved to Portland with a woman named Sky and a promise to find himself. Camille stopped waiting on child support. She stopped hoping. She built her own safety net, thread by thread, one client at a time. The job was exhausting, yes, but it gave her control. A mortgage she could manage. Health insurance that actually covered Isla's prescriptions. A life that felt stable, even if she was always one crisis away from collapse. And then came Zenovate. It started with an all-hands meeting in the new auditorium, the one they never seemed to use unless someone was being laid off or something shiny was being announced. Camille remembered the day vividly, because the CEO, Vernon, hadn't looked anyone in the eye when he said it. We're excited to announce a partnership with Zenovate Corporation that will allow us to scale, innovate, and serve our clients better than ever before. The slideshow behind him showed smiling professionals shaking hands across continents. The phrase strategic alignment was thrown around like confetti. Camille hadn't clapped, not because she wasn't hopeful, but because Vernon's voice had trembled ever so slightly, and that tremble said more than the press release ever could. 2 weeks later, everyone got new email signatures, new reporting systems, new collaboration portals. The free snacks disappeared. The ping pong table was shoved into storage to make room for flex desks. People stopped talking during lunch. And then came the departures. At first, it was the junior analysts, then middle managers. Camille watched as desks were cleared out with no warning, no goodbyes, just an empty chair and a polite email about restructuring for growth. She kept her head down. She worked harder. Her team of 6 became 4, then 3, then just her and a junior hire she was expected to train while keeping all the old accounts afloat. And still, she believed she was safe, because no one else knew the clients like she did. Because no one else could walk into a room and calm a billion-dollar logistics partner who was threatening to cancel. Because she had made herself irreplaceable, hadn't she? She remembered once telling Isla during bedtime, "Mommy's job is secure because she solves the problems no one else can." Isla had nodded solemnly and said, "Like a superhero." Now, sitting in that garage with her hand still trembling, Camille realized the truth. Even superheroes get laid off. The slow death of Atlas didn't happen with explosions. It happened in whispers, memos, calendar invites, without context. And Camille felt every shift like a fault line beneath her feet. The first memo came from Zenovate's new Synergy Integration Office, a cheerful PDF titled Optimizing Client Services post-merger landed in her inbox, complete with colorful infographics about workflow consolidation and resource redistribution. It looked like a school project, but she knew exactly what it meant. People would go, authority would disappear, budgets would shrink, And eventually, Atlas would stop existing, at least in any way that mattered. Within weeks, they replaced the internal CRM she'd helped build with a clunky, over-engineered platform from Zenovate's legacy tools. It crashed weekly. None of the engineers knew how to fix it, but no one wanted to admit that the old system worked better. Camille submitted tickets. No one responded. Her team, what was left of it, was exhausted. Maria, a sharp-witted account manager who once hosted trivia nights for the department, stopped speaking in meetings. Devin, the youngest hire, barely 26, developed a nervous eye twitch. Priya, their analytics lead, broke down crying during a Tuesday call with Helix Biotech. And still, no one from Zenovate noticed. Or maybe they noticed and just didn't care. Camille was clocking 70 hours a week. She ate lunch at her desk or skipped it entirely. She took meetings at 11 p.m. because a VP in San Francisco didn't understand time zones. Her laptop came to the dinner table. Isla would glance at her across a half-eaten plate of spaghetti and ask quietly, "Are you working again?" Camille would nod, guilt souring her stomach. "Just for a little bit, sweetheart." But it was never a little bit. One night, she missed Isla's school recital. Not because she forgot. She had the flyer taped to her fridge. She even left the office at 4 p.m. to make it on time. But on the freeway, her phone rang. Orion Logistics was threatening to back out of a renewal. The call lasted 90 minutes. By the time she pulled into the parking lot, the auditorium was dark. Isla was sitting with her teacher, hugging a construction paper violin. "I saved you a seat," she whispered. Camille cried the whole drive home. Still, she kept going, because that's what she did, because she thought that if she just kept showing up, kept being the glue, the fixer, the one who never dropped the ball, someone at the top would recognize it, would protect her. But Zenovate didn't operate on loyalty. They operated on spreadsheets. And Camille knew deep down, she had known for months, that she was a name on a list, a role with a salary too high and a line on a budget too easy to delete. She just hadn't expected the blow to land like that. So sudden, so surgical. They didn't even give her a week. Just a single sheet of paper, a number, and a smile. And the worst part, Camille almost accepted it. That night, after the tears dried, after Isla fell asleep beside her on the couch with her inhaler clutched in one hand, Camille stared at the ceiling in the dark. Would it be so bad? 58,000 was still a salary. It wouldn't cover everything, but maybe she could cut back. Maybe sell the car, take on a roommate, move to a cheaper school district, swallow the humiliation and just survive. That's what Zenovate was counting on. They knew about Isla's asthma, about Camille's mortgage, about her lack of support network. They were betting she'd stay silent, grateful even, that she'd smile, nod, and continue bleeding for them. Camille almost let them win. Almost. The next morning, Camille stood in the shower, letting the water scald her skin in place of coffee. Her body ached in a way that went beyond exhaustion. It was grief, a grief she couldn't quite name yet. She moved like a ghost, packing Isla's lunch, brushing her daughter's hair, whispering soft promises about attending the science fair, for real this time, even as her voice cracked under the weight of uncertainty. She didn't tell Isla about the pay cut. Not yet. She couldn't bring herself to say the words. At 7:58 a.m., Camille parked in her usual spot in the underground garage of the Atlas building and stared up through the windshield at the company she had helped build, piece by piece, for nearly a decade. 9 years of her life, now being offered back to her at a 60% discount. Her hand hovered over the ignition. That's when her phone rang. Unknown number. For a second, she almost let it go to voicemail. But then something inside her, the same quiet instinct that had once told her to leave her marriage, to take a risk on Atlas, to never stop fighting for Isla, made her answer. "Hello," she said, her voice raw. "Camille," came a voice, bright with urgency. "It's Jasmine. Jasmine Park." Camille blinked. Jasmine had been her right hand at Atlas before jumping ship a year ago. She hadn't heard from her since. Wow, Camille said. Hi. This is a surprise. I've been trying to reach you all week, Jasmine said. Have you checked your LinkedIn messages? No, Camille admitted. I've been a little preoccupied. Jasmine hesitated, then lowered her voice. Listen, I'm at Stratos Edge now. We've been watching what Xenovate's been doing to Atlas. It's a bloodbath, Camille. But our CEO, Nathan Keller, he's been asking about you. He wants to talk. Camille frowned, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He knows who I am. He knows you're the reason Orion and Helix stayed with Atlas after the merger. He knows you're the only one holding those relationships together right now. He wants to meet. Soon. Camille stared through the windshield at the glossy new Xenovate logo bolted to the side of the building. So shiny. So cold. So not hers. Jasmine, she said slowly, I think tonight would be perfect. That evening, after Isla fell asleep in her room with a book still resting on her chest, Camille opened her laptop and pulled up her original employment contract with Atlas. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad, nervous but determined. No non-compete clause. Atlas had never required one. They were too small back then, too idealistic. Xenovate had issued new contracts for recent hires, but never got around to updating the legacy employees. Their oversight, her opportunity. She closed the laptop, stood for a moment in the quiet apartment, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not fear. Clarity. At 9:37 p.m., she called Jasmine back. Can you set up a meeting with your CEO tomorrow morning? Camille asked. I have to give Atlas my answer before noon. What's going on? Jasmine asked. They slashed my salary by more than half, Camille said. Kept the workload. Took the title. Didn't even have the decency to lie about it. Jasmine was quiet. Then, give me 10 minutes. I'm texting Nathan now. 15 minutes later, Camille's phone rang again. This time the number wasn't unknown. Camille Foster, came a voice both steady and warm. Nathan Keller? Jasmine tells me we need to talk. Camille took a breath, then nodded as if he could see her. Yes, I think we might be able to help each other. The next morning, Camille entered the polished, glass and steel lobby of Stratos Edge. The building felt like the kind of place where dreams were bought and sold without a second thought. The air was cool, almost sterile, and the heavy scent of polished wood and leather chairs gave it an aura of power that Camille wasn't used to. It wasn't her world, at least not yet. She pressed the button for the elevator and stood still, her eyes fixed on the illuminated floor numbers above. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped inside and silently pressed the button for the top floor. It felt like she was ascending into another world, one that she wasn't entirely sure she belonged to. But she wasn't here to second-guess herself. Jasmine had told her to dress for success, but in this world, success wasn't just about appearances. It was about power. Camille had played the game before, but now she was in control of her own rules. This was a new game. As the elevator reached the top floor, she stepped out into the sleek conference room, where Nathan Keller was already waiting. He was seated at a long, glossy table, a man in his mid-40s with an aura of quiet authority. His tailored suit and sharp, calculating eyes were a stark contrast to the way Camille felt right now. Out of place, on edge, but determined. He rose as she entered and offered her a smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. It was the kind of smile people give when they know they're about to negotiate for something bigger than you can even imagine. Camille, Nathan greeted, his voice smooth. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Pleasure's mine, Camille replied, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. I hear you're the man with the offer. I wouldn't say that, Nathan said, sitting back down. But I do think we have something to discuss. He gestured toward the seat across from him, and Camille took her place. Jasmine was quietly taking notes from the side, but Nathan wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Camille, sizing her up. "I'll be blunt," Nathan continued, his voice low. "I've been keeping an eye on you for a while now. You were one of the key people who kept Atlas from collapsing after the merger. You made decisions that kept critical clients on board, and you're one of the few who understands the intricacies of this industry." Camille met his gaze, unwavering. "That's nice to hear. But if you think I'm here because you want to give me a pat on the back, you're mistaken." Nathan smirked slightly. "No, Camille. I'm here to make you an offer that could change everything." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing in anticipation. "You're a sharp woman," Nathan said. "I've been following your work for years. I know you're not afraid to make tough choices, but what I'm offering is something different." Camille's mind raced as she mentally calculated every angle. She had a sense of where this was going, but she needed him to say it. "You have a choice," Nathan said, his voice suddenly cold, businesslike. "You can stay at Atlas and fight for a place at the table that no longer exists. Or you can join us, help Stratos Edge grow even faster, build something bigger than you've ever dreamed, and be compensated in ways Atlas could never afford." He leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. "You can take the job as Senior VP of Strategy. Lead the charge on acquisitions, mergers, and new client deals. We're offering a salary that's 3 times what you're making now, with bonuses tied to the success of the deals you bring in. You'll have the power to lead, to shape the future of this company." Camille's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. The numbers were tempting. The title was even more tempting. But it wasn't about that anymore. It wasn't about the money, the prestige, or the position. It was about power. She met his gaze without hesitation. "And what do you expect from me in return?" Nathan's lips curled into a thin smile. "Loyalty, Camille. We're building something here, and I want you in the center of it. We don't need more people who are afraid to make the hard calls. We need people who are willing to take the risks and win." Camille didn't speak for a long moment. She knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an invitation to change the entire trajectory of her career. But it wasn't just her career that mattered. It was Isla. Her daughter needed a future where they could both thrive, not just survive. "I'll need time to think," Camille said, though her mind was already made up. Nathan didn't push. He simply nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need, but know that the offer stands. Stratos Edge is ready to bring you on board whenever you're ready to make your move." As Camille stood to leave, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. This was her chance to strike back, to show Atlas that she didn't need them anymore. She had something bigger, something better, and Stratos Edge was about to get the surprise of its life. Camille didn't sleep that night. Not really. She lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling while Isla snored softly in the room next door. Her mind played out every possible scenario. What would happen if she stayed, if she left, if she fought back, if she stayed quiet? But the truth had already settled somewhere deep inside her, and it was unshakable. By sunrise, the decision wasn't just made, it was alive in her bloodstream. She rose before Isla, put on her best navy suit, the one she'd worn to close the Orion Logistics renewal, and did her makeup with the precision of a surgeon. Not to impress, to armor herself. Today wasn't about beauty. It was about control. On the way to school, she hugged Isla just a little tighter. Her daughter looked up, sensing something was different. "Are you okay, Mom?" "I will be," Camille whispered. And this time she believed it. The Atlas office looked exactly as it always had. Gray, bland, sterile, but something inside Camille had changed. She didn't flinch as she stepped through the glass doors. Didn't hesitate when the receptionist looked at her with wide eyes, as if she could smell revolution on her skin. Dennis and Tracy were already waiting in the small conference room. A manila folder with her name on it sat between them, unopened. Dennis didn't bother standing. "Camille," he said flatly, "have you made your decision?" She smiled politely and took a seat across from them, hands folded neatly on the table. I have a few questions first, she said calmly. Tracy blinked. Dennis exhaled loudly. This really isn't a negotiation. We just need a yes or a no. I understand, Camille said. But since I manage our 10 largest clients, I'd like to know who'll be handling the Westfield system integration next month, or the Helix biotech contract renewal in June. Dennis waved dismissively. Those responsibilities will be reassigned internally. You won't need to concern yourself. I promised the Westfield CTO that I'd personally oversee their integration, and Mark from Helix specifically requested me for the renewal. They're company accounts, Dennis snapped, not personal relationships. Camille leaned forward slightly. Is it true that Zennovate is relocating the entire client services division offshore in the next 8 months? Dennis froze. The blood drained from Tracy's face. Where did you hear that? He asked tightly. Is it true? Camille repeated. That's confidential company information. So that's a yes. Dennis's jaw clenched. This meeting is about your current offer, not hypothetical restructuring. Camille's voice turned sharp. You were planning to let me accept a 60% pay cut, just so I could train the person who'll replace me, weren't you? Silence. Dennis finally straightened his back, voice icy. Do you accept the offer or not? Camille sat back, took a breath, and spoke without hesitation. I quit. Dennis blinked. Tracy's pen fell from her hand. Excuse me. I quit, Camille repeated. Effective immediately. Dennis's expression hardened into smugness. I'm afraid that's not possible. Company policy requires 2 weeks' notice for director-level roles. Camille smiled, sharp, surgical. According to my original Atlas contract, still binding since Zennovate never reissued new terms, notice periods must match severance periods. Atlas offered 1 week severance. That's my notice. Tracy opened her mouth, then shut it again. And, Camille added, my contract also states that in the event of any compensation reduction exceeding 15%, all transitional responsibilities are waived. That clause was added after Trey Miller tried to hold his client portfolio hostage. I helped draft it. You can check with Vernon Chong if you'd like. Dennis's face darkened to a deep red. You can't just walk out, he growled. Camille stood, smoothing her jacket. Watch me. She turned, walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. Oh, and I've accepted a new position. At Stratos Edge. Effective Monday. Dennis went pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came. No non-compete in place, she said lightly. Not with Atlas. And Zennovate never made me sign one. Then she walked out, heels clicking like gunshots across the polished floor. The explosion didn't come the way Camille had expected. There was no yelling, no slamming of fists, no dramatic shouting down the hallway. That would have almost been a relief. Instead, Dennis just went still, dead still, as if someone had unplugged his soul. His jaw tightened. His eyes went flat. And then, quietly, coldly, he said the words that made her skin crawl. You've just made a very serious mistake, Miss Foster. Camille didn't flinch. I've made a choice. There's a difference. Tracy finally found her voice, though she wished she hadn't. We'll be reviewing all of your communications and client interactions. If we find any indication that you've attempted to poach company clients or shared proprietary data, you'll bury me in litigation, Camille finished, her tone flat. Yes, Dennis already threatened that. Very on brand. Tracy glanced at Dennis, uncertain whether she was supposed to keep talking. I haven't taken anything that doesn't belong to me, Camille said. I didn't download a single file. I didn't forward a single email. All I have are the relationships I built, the trust one earned, and the knowledge in my head. That doesn't belong to you. She turned and walked out before they could respond. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs, but she didn't let it show. The open office space outside the conference room was oddly silent. A few heads turned. Whispers buzzed through the cubicles like static. Her desk was already half cleared. She didn't remember when she'd done it. Last night, maybe after the call with Nathan? A subconscious gesture. A preparation. Maria, Devin, and Priya were waiting nearby. Her team, what was left of it, they looked like people holding their breath. Is it true? Priya whispered. You're leaving. Devin added, almost pleading. Camille nodded once. What about us? Maria asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was scared. Camille's gaze softened. Check your email in an hour, she said quietly. All of you. She didn't elaborate. There wasn't time. Her hands moved quickly, grabbing the framed photo of Isla, the emergency inhaler in the drawer, the mug that read world's okayest boss, a gag gift from her team 2 Christmases ago. 9 years of her life fit neatly into a cardboard box. Security met her at the elevator. It was protocol for senior-level departures, especially abrupt ones. She didn't resist, didn't cry, not in the elevator, not in the lobby, not in her car. Instead, she pulled out her phone and made 3 calls. The first was to Nathan. I've quit, she said simply. How'd they take it? He asked. They threatened to sue me. Of course they did. His voice was calm. We'll have legal on standby. Don't worry. You're protected. The second call was harder. Ellie. Vernon Chang's voice came through the speaker, warm and surprised. Is everything okay? No, Camille said, letting the exhaustion show. They cut my salary by 60%. I quit. Took a job with Stratos Edge. Vernon was quiet for a moment. Then came a sigh. That merger wasn't supposed to go like this. But it did, Camille replied. And now they're threatening to drag me through court for taking another job. A better job. What do you need? Vernon asked, and Camille heard genuine regret in his voice. I need you to confirm to them and to anyone else that there was never a non-compete, that I had every right to walk away. I'll call Gerald Marlowe myself, Vernon said, referring to Zenovate's elusive CEO. You have my word. The third call was the most important. Sonia West, said the voice on the other end. Or Ion Logistics. Sonia, it's Camille Foster. Camille, she said quickly. I was just about to call you. We need to shift the deployment timeline up by 2 weeks. The board's pushing hard. I'm not with Atlas anymore, Camille interrupted gently. As of this morning. Silence. Where are you going? Stratos Edge. Another pause. This because of the merger? It's because they tried to cut my legs out from under me while asking me to train my replacement. They didn't tell us, Sonia muttered, more to herself than Camille. That's typical. I'm sorry. Don't be, Sonia said, her voice firm. Send me your new contact info. We need to talk. By the time Camille picked Isla up from school, she'd received 14 text messages and 27 emails. 6 were from her team, forwarding panicked messages from Dennis demanding documentation, client summaries, and transition memos. 1 was from Vernon, confirming he'd spoken to Zenovate's board directly. The rest? Clients, reaching out, asking where she was going, letting her know they were watching. They always were. That night, Camille sat at the kitchen table while Isla worked on her science fair poster beside her, carefully cutting out glittery letters that spelled how plants breathe. The sharp scent of glue sticks clung to the air, mixing with the faint aroma of leftover lasagna. Camille had finally had time to reheat. For the first time in months, she wasn't answering emails between bites of food. For the first time in forever, her laptop was closed by 7:30 p.m. Isla glanced sideways at her. You didn't bring your laptop to dinner, she said suspiciously. Camille smiled, ruffling her daughter's hair. I told you I left my job. Isla squinted. The one that made you cry when you thought I was asleep? Camille's smile faltered. You heard that? I always do. Camille swallowed the lump in her throat. I got a new job, a better one. I'll be home more, and your asthma meds will be fully covered now. Isla blinked. So, does that mean you'll come to my science fair? Camille leaned in. Front row. Embarrassing signs. Probably glitter. Isla grinned. An hour later, after Isla had gone to bed, Camille's phone buzzed with a message from Jasmine. Maria and Devin just called me. They want in. I'm setting up onboarding meetings for Monday. Camille exhaled, closing her eyes. Two of her best people. Safe, seen, moving forward. She thought about Priya, still stuck at Atlas, her visa tied to employment. Camille had already contacted a lawyer about sponsoring Priya's transfer in 6 months. One thing at a time. More texts followed. Sonia from Orion. Let's schedule a full call tomorrow. I'm talking to the board this week. Mark from Helix saw the news. You were the only reason we stayed. Expect a call. Her email inbox was flooded. Clients she hadn't spoken to in weeks. Vendors. Former co-workers. Even a few junior staffers from Atlas asking if she'd be willing to talk off the record about what Stratos Edge was really like. It was like someone had pulled a thread, and now the whole fabric of Atlas was unraveling. But Camille wasn't done. The next morning, she woke to find a voicemail. Unknown number. She played it on speaker while pouring coffee. This is Gerald Marlowe, the voice said. Calm. Cold. CEO of Zenovate Corporation. Ms. Foster, I believe we need to have a conversation. Her stomach clenched. The top. The man above Dennis. Above Tracy. The one Vernon had promised to call. She called back. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Foster, he said smoothly. We've been getting a lot of calls this week. From clients. From Vernon Chong. From your former colleagues. Seems you've made quite the impact. I'm just doing what I've always done, Camille replied. Only now for someone who values it. Are you actively encouraging our clients to follow you to Stratos Edge? No, Camille said, calm as ever. I've simply informed them I'm no longer with Atlas. They're drawing their own conclusions. Dennis tells a different story. Dennis offered me a 60% pay cut, with no reduction in workload, then threatened litigation when I didn't accept. Forgive me if I don't value his version of events. There was a pause. Then, surprisingly, Gerald's tone shifted. The pay cut and outsourcing plan were not approved by me or the executive committee. And yet, Camille said they happened. Another pause. What would it take to bring you back? Gerald asked. To repair this. Camille almost laughed. You can't be serious. I am, he said flatly. Orion and Helix together represent over 20 million in annual contracts. If they walk, others may follow. We've run the numbers. It's cheaper to keep you than to lose them. And there it was. Not loyalty. Not regret. Not apology. Just math. Camille's voice dropped to a whisper. So, I'm worth keeping. When it costs you millions. But not when I needed a living wage and a little respect. Silence. We're prepared to match Stratos' offer, Gerald said. Plus retention bonuses. It's not about the money, Camille replied. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. It's about the 9 years your company erased with one meeting. And the fact that you're only calling now, not because what happened was wrong, but because it's expensive. There was another silence. Longer. Deeper. What do you want? He asked finally, like a man who truly didn't understand. Camille didn't hesitate. I want you to treat the people still there better than you treated me. Look at what Dennis is doing to that office. Ask yourself if that's really the company you want to build. That's it, he asked. And for you to stop threatening to sue me for taking a better job, she added, sharper now. I didn't steal anything. I didn't poach anyone. I simply refused to be disposable. There was a long pause. No lawsuit, Gerald said at last. You have my word. 3 days later, Camille Foster walked into the headquarters of Stratos Edge, not as a guest, not as a candidate, but as the newly appointed executive vice president of client strategy. A real office, not a cubicle, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Chicago skyline. The desk was clean, modern, and hers. There was a welcome card sitting neatly beside a branded notebook. Inside it, in Jasmine's unmistakable handwriting, "You were never meant to play small." Her team was already forming. Maria and Devin had put in their resignations the day after she did. Stratos moved quickly, onboarding them within 72 hours. Camille had assigned Devin to support emerging clients and gave Maria her first leadership role, managing technical implementation across 3 verticals. Both cried when they saw their new compensation packages. Priya was still at Atlas. Her visa held her hostage. But Camille wasn't done fighting. She'd already connected with Stratos' immigration council, and they were reviewing options for a mid-year transfer. Camille checked in with her every evening, and Priya always said the same thing: "It's okay. Just knowing you're out there gives me hope." 2 weeks in, Camille had met with every major client now under her jurisdiction. Sonia from Orion Logistics had already signed a letter of intent to transition their entire infrastructure contract to Stratos. The new Atlas team had fumbled onboarding so badly, Sonia didn't even bother warning them. "They didn't know what half the acronyms meant," Sonia muttered on their call. And when I asked about Camille's replacement, the guy blinked and said, "Which one?" Camille hadn't even needed to say "I told you so." A month later, Helix Biotech followed. Then a 3rd client. Then a 4th. All of them had come to the same conclusion. Their trust wasn't with a logo, it was with her. She never initiated those calls. She never made the first move. But they all found her. By the 6-month mark, 5 of Atlas's top 10 clients had signed with Stratos Edge. Not because Camille stole them, because Atlas let them go. And because Camille, for the first time in her career, had the tools and the power to give them something better. Inside the walls of Stratos, she flourished. Her ideas weren't interrupted in meetings. Her strategies were implemented, not rephrased by someone louder. She hired 5 women into key roles by the end of Q2, launched a mentorship initiative for first-gen professionals, and led a cross-departmental restructuring that increased client retention by 14% in 90 days. But none of that compared to what happened at home. She made it to Isla's science fair, front row, holding a glittery sign that said plants are cool because Isla said so. Isla spotted her immediately from the stage, gave a tiny double thumbs up, and mouthed the words, "You came." Camille nodded. She didn't cry. Not until later. Dinner became routine again, without the glowing laptop screen between them. She tucked Isla into bed every night, read aloud from Percy Jackson, attended every soccer game, even the cold ones. Her stress didn't vanish, but it shifted from survival mode to something sustainable, something human. And Atlas? Gerald Marlowe kept his word. There was no lawsuit, but there was a restructuring. Dennis left to pursue other opportunities. Tracy followed. The planned offshore transition? Abandoned. Salary bands were revised. Managers were required to implement retention plans for top performers. The internal newsletter claimed it was part of a new people-first strategy. Camille didn't read it. She didn't need to. Atlas was trying to become a better place, but too late. Not for her. One afternoon, at a tech leadership summit in Denver, she ran into Vernon Chong, the man who'd once promised her equity, promised her stability, and then sold it all. He pulled her into a hug before she could stop him. "I've been following your work," he said quietly. "Camille, I'm proud of you. I should have protected you better. I thought Zenovate would honor the culture we built." Camille just nodded, offering him a small, tired smile. "It's business," she said, echoing the line Gerald had once used. "Nothing personal." But they both knew that was a lie. It's always personal. It wasn't the salary. It wasn't the title. It wasn't the new office, the view of the skyline, or the respectful boardroom silence when Camille spoke. No, that wasn't the real revenge. The real revenge was walking through the doors of Stratos each morning and being greeted by people who didn't doubt her. It was watching Maria lead strategy, calls like she was born to do it. It was seeing Devon laugh again after months of quiet fear. It was the call she got from Priya last week, the one where her voice shook with emotion as she said, "My transfer request just got approved." It was the quiet, not the kind of quiet in the Atlas HR office the day her salary was gutted, but the kind of quiet that came from peace, from no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop, from no longer squeezing her value into a paycheck someone else controlled, from finally realizing that power didn't come from pleasing people. It came from choosing yourself, even when it terrifies you. It had been almost a year since she left Atlas, and in that time, 5 clients followed her. Her department grew from 3 to 22, and she made more money than she'd ever imagined. Enough to pay off the mortgage, build a college fund for Isla, and take a real vacation for the first time in a decade. They went to Oregon, just the 2 of them, rented a cabin by the water. Isla collected rocks. Camille collected breath. One afternoon, she got an email from someone still at Atlas, a junior associate, a name she barely remembered. The subject line said, "Thank you." Inside, a single sentence, "You leaving gave the rest of us permission to ask for more." Camille stared at that email for a long time. That's when she knew. The pay cut was never the worst thing that happened to her. The worst thing was believing, if only for a moment, that she had no choice but to accept it, that she was lucky to be there, that she couldn't walk away. Because that's what companies like Zenovate counted on. They didn't break you with one big betrayal. They wore you down with 1,000 tiny ones, until you forgot you were worth more. But Camille remembered now, and she would never forget again. Sometimes people ask her if she regrets it, walking away, risking everything, burning the bridge behind her. And she always says the same thing. No, because that bridge led nowhere. And building my own road, it led me home. If you had told her 1 year ago that the worst day of her career would become the beginning of her becoming, she wouldn't have believed you. But that's the thing about moments that feel like endings. Sometimes they're just the silence before your voice finds its power. Sometimes they're just the breath before the scream becomes a song. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming back at those who tried to silence you. It's walking away and making sure they hear the echo of your footsteps for years.